Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
Hey, it's James Altucher. I've been an entrepreneur, investor, best-selling writer, stand-up comic, and whatever it is I'm interested in, I get obsessed. Yes, it's led to success, but it's also led to such heartbreaking failure. I have failed more times than I can count. I wish in my life I had had people to talk to. That's why I started the James Altucher Show and bring on some of the most brilliant minds in every area of life. People like Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban, Danica Patrick, Gary Kasparov. And I wanted to find out exactly how they've navigated the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, just raw stories and real advice. I've talked to 1,500 of the most amazing people on the planet. So if you want to learn from the best and skip the same old canned interviews, we're all about helping you find your next big idea, level up your thinking, and ultimately to choose yourself. So let's do this together. Subscribe now to The James Altucher Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 416 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Yo, what's up?
Yo, what's up?
Thought I'd change it up on you just to see if you know.
You threw me for a loop. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing good. My wife and I got back from our trip from Chicago to celebrate our anniversary. It was a great trip. And, now we're back in the swing of things. She's back to work. I'm back to work.
Did you get my congratulations on 29 years being married basket?
No, I did not.
Huh.
Where'd you send that to? Chicago?
Chicago.
Just Chicago? It just was labeled Chicago.
The hotel.
Some hotel.
I said, it's a hotel in Chicago. Make sure they get it.
All right. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Daryl the Girl.
Hey, Daryl.
Elizabeth Katz.
What's going on, Elizabeth?
Emily Doran.
Hi, Emily.
Trista Campbell jumped out at her highest level.
Hey, Trista.
Sharon McCall.
What's going on, McCall?
Ann Anderson.
Hey, Ann.
Alexandra Jewer.
Hey, thanks, Drew.
Angie Villa.
Hey, Angie.
And last but not least, Marissa Franco jumped out higher than our highest level.
Is it Marissa?
Marissa with 2 A's.
Yeah.
And if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Kelly Skinner.
Thanks, Skinner.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support, the continued support. We also had a great PayPal donation from Erica Del Rio.
Oh, that's awesome, Erica.
Yeah, thank you all. We have a brand new episode out right now on True Crime All the Time where we're talking about Brian Patrick Miller. This is a really bad guy. Gibbs, was convicted of murdering 2 women, but thought to have murdered a number of girls and women, a serial rapist, murderer, but he was a local celebrity in Phoenix, known as the Zombie Hunter.
Hey, there's the Zombie Hunter.
Yeah, drove around in a car that said Zombie Hunter and had blood dripping off of it and turned out to be a killer.
Like you driving around. There's Fergie.
You think I put Fergie on my car?
No, I spray painted on the other side.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of Jeremy Bright. 14-year-old Jeremy Bright disappeared in August 1986 while attending a fair in Coos County, Oregon. Decades later, Jeremy has still not been found. Although no one has come forward, Jeremy's family and the police believe someone knows what happened to him and that his remains could be found in Coos County.
You know, we said this on the Patreon episode that that's kind of a fear of mine when my kids were little, going to these big fairs and festivals and, you know, misplacing them, losing them.
Well, kids walk off. Young kids, they wander off. And yeah, I know we're supposed to be keeping our eyes on them, but, they can be quick about things.
Yeah, they can jet off really quick.
And the fact of the matter is, some of these fairs are huge, especially when you're talking about a state fair.
Yeah.
Like our state fair in Columbus is massive. And I think most, state fairs are fairly large.
And if I'm at that fair and I'm trying to throw that ring around that bottle thing to win that gigantic stuffed bear, I'm kind of concentrating, making sure I get that ring on the third flip,
All those games are rigged, right? They're all rigged.
Are they?
Allegedly.
Oh.
You should know you worked as a carny for like 6 years.
Yeah, we said we were never going to talk about that again.
Oh, my bad. Jeremy Dolan Bright was born on May 25th, 1972. He grew up in Myrtle Point, Oregon, and lived with his mother, Diane Beatty, and his younger sister, Esty. And I've never heard that name before.
Esty?
Yeah, and it's spelled S''Te. Esty. It's so unique.
It is very unique.
Diane was married to a man named Orville Golseth, but by 1986, they were separated. Diane and the kids moved over 100 miles away to Grants Pass, Oregon, where she was working and attending school so she could leave her bartending job.
Grants Pass, kind of cool.
While my wife and I were in Chicago, we were thinking about other places to go that we haven't been.
Yeah.
Now, the Northeast is someplace I've been wanting to travel, never been there, like Boston, Maine, up through those places, but also the Northwest, Oregon, Washington. I've not been up there either.
You still have I don't want to call it a crush, maybe a fascination for Bigfoot?
Sure.
I mean, you used to.
Yeah. I mean, I still, follow all the sightings and
okay,
look at all the videos.
I mean, you do have a Sasquatch tattoo, so just saying.
The problem is my dad let me get it when I was 10, and it looked good then, but has really kind of changed as I've grown older and gotten bigger.
But the funny thing is how the your natural body hair has filled in the hair. Yes.
Based on later interviews, authorities believe Jeremy was troubled by the divorce and the move, which occurred in the middle of his 8th grade year. This was evidenced by a decline in his grades. Diane attributed this to Jeremy still adjusting to his new school. And you and I have talked about divorce quite a bit. You didn't have to go through that. I did. It's not an easy thing. Some kids handle it better than others. So, Jeremy had a decline in his grades. Is it more likely that it was him adjusting to a new school or the divorce? I don't know, but, I'm kind of leaning towards the divorce just because that can be such a traumatic experience. By the summer of 1986, Jeremy was looking forward to starting high school. He was described as a popular student and a star basketball player. Jeremy hoped to make the high school team.
Well, you can relate to that.
I can. I wouldn't say I was a star basketball player. I was a pretty good basketball player. One thing Jeremy had always enjoyed was attending the Coos County Fair in Myrtle Point. Jeremy's stepfather, Orville Golseth, agreed to take care of Jeremy and his sister for a week so they could go to the fair and visit relatives who lived in town. Diane told the Oregonian, instead of them vegging in Grants Pass for a week while I worked and went to school, I thought that would be a great little trip for them. I have regretted it ever since.
That's got to be hard, right? I mean, you're trying to do something good for the kids. Instead of them just moping around the house, let's get them up there, let them have some fun at the fair, and hang out with some other kids and do some cool things. Because the fairs were always cool.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. But also, I think here you're seeing how Jeremy and his sister must have had a pretty good relationship with their stepfather, because after the divorce, they're going to go stay with him for a week.
Well, clearly they had a decent relationship that allowed them to go visit him.
Diane described Myrtle Point as the kind of place where young teens like Jeremy could roam around without getting in trouble. She said about Jeremy, he had run of the town since he was 5. Everybody knew him. So, okay, not everybody lives or has lived in a small town like this. But, they exist, or at least did exist in the 80s, because I grew up in one.
I would say, I thought, that's something that you can relate to.
Yeah. I mean, as a very young kid, we pretty much had free reign. I mean, we were allowed to go on our bikes all over town. It was such a small town. Everybody knew each other. It wasn't even a town. It was called a village. On August 14th, 1986, Jeremy went to the fair with his sister, Esty, and a group of friends. He separated from his sister around 2 o'clock and agreed to meet her near the Ferris wheel at 5 o'clock. Jeremy made a long-distance call to his mother around 4:45 p.m. Per Unsolved Mysteries, he spoke to her from a payphone outside McKay's Market in Myrtle Point. Jeremy told Diane about his trip and said he was having a good time at the fair. He mentioned that he was going to meet Esty at 5 p.m. Diane told Jeremy she would come pick them up in 2 days. Nothing about their conversation indicated Jeremy was in any kind of trouble or distress. And in so many of these cases that we profile, Gibbs, you have an interaction. In this instance, it's a phone call between Jeremy and his mother right before an event occurs. In this case, it's going to be him going missing, but it's the tenor and the tone of these conversations that people analyze.
Oh, for sure.
It sounds like this was a normal, everyday type of conversation.
No concerns.
No, he wasn't worried about anything. He didn't sound nervous or anxious. He basically said, hey, we're having a great time. I'm, getting ready to go meet my sister. Nothing wrong. She wasn't picking up, as most mothers would, that something was up.
Yeah.
But Jeremy didn't show up to the designated meeting place. Esty was worried about him and sought out a police officer who told her not to worry and said Jeremy was probably off with his friends. About 5 hours later at 9:40 p.m., Jeremy entered a local tavern owned by his grandmother. He met his stepfather and asked to borrow some money. This was the last time anyone in the family saw Jeremy. He never came home. The family doubted that he went off with friends because he left behind his house keys, wallet, and a watch he'd recently purchased. So, I just want to back up here a minute and talk about this timeline. So Jeremy has a call with his mother around 4:45 p.m. He is supposed to meet his sister near the Ferris wheel at 5. He doesn't show. She's worried,
right?
Obviously, that he doesn't show up. And almost 5 hours later, he shows up at a tavern and asks his stepfather for money.
It's a pretty good gap of time. Wonder what happened in between.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking. What happened in that almost 5 hour period of time?
But his stepfather saying, well, I did see him at 9:40 when he came in and asked me for some money.
I'm also wondering, where is Esty at this point? Because obviously she's not communicated or not seen her stepfather to communicate that Jeremy didn't show up. Before going to the police, the family spent most of Saturday, August 15th, searching for Jeremy around town. They did call the police that day, but not much was done. And sadly, that is something that you hear about a lot in cases from the 80s, right? Today, a call to the authorities about a missing child. We're not talking adult here. We're talking about a missing 14-year-old boy would be taken pretty seriously. But,
yeah, they're going to be more quick to go to action.
Yeah, there's going to be a sense of urgency. But, in the 80s, it wasn't always the case. And I'm assuming maybe even less so in a small town where nothing really happened. Everybody felt pretty safe. They might have thought, there's nothing to worry about, right? He's going to show up. Diane arrived in Myrtle Point on August 16th and went to Orville's house to pick the kids up, only to learn Jeremy was still missing. However, she did believe he was still in town. Diane told Unsolved Mysteries, I went in and on the TV set was his house keys from our Grants Pass apartment and his wallet with his new watch that he told me he'd bought. I knew when I found those things that he was around somewhere because he wouldn't leave without them. And I get that line of thinking, right? It's something that's often examined in an unsolved case. Someone doesn't come home. Someone is missing, but yet most of the things that you would think they would take with them if they were going to leave voluntarily are not taken. Now, she's looking, I think, at the bright side in saying, he's around here somewhere. I think the darker side of that is that you could start to think, well, something bad has happened to him. He didn't just leave on his own. He's met with foul play. And you always have that, okay, does someone just up and leave to get away from their family, to start a new life? A little tougher when you're 14 years old.
I don't think you're in the mindset to think like that.
Well, how are you going to live?
Yeah.
How are you going to make money? And you don't have your wallet. You don't have this brand new watch that you bought.
I mean, I know the carny life's a lot of fun.
Yeah. But would they even hire a 14-year-old? Maybe they would back then. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not sure what the screening process was in the 1980s with a traveling circus. Maybe you could fill us in on that.
It was a little low. A little
lax.
Yes. But I also had a special skill set.
Yeah, you had the ability to guess anyone's weight just by sight. And you still do. It's quite amazing.
It really is. It's a fun party trick. It doesn't go over well.
It does not. Especially with women. They don't like it when you're guessing their weight, even when you're correct. That's not a good thing.
I'm sorry, but it's true. It's what you weigh.
Diane called the police to report Jeremy missing on the night of August 16th. Locals reported seeing Jeremy as late as 3 days after his disappearance. However, none of these alleged sightings are confirmed. And that comes up quite a bit too. And it really plays havoc with the timeline, right? When you think a certain date is the last time anyone was seen, but then people start coming forward and saying, no, I saw that person 2 days after that or 3 days after that. Well, that can mess with an investigation.
Certainly can throw a wrench into it.
Years later, Esty told the Coos Bay World newspaper that she informed the police she saw Jeremy speaking to two men she didn't recognize, but as she said, for whatever reason, the officer I talked to didn't believe me. They thought I was making up a story to help out. But I had seen him leave with these people. He did.
That had to be frustrating for her. She's trying to get help for her brother.
And they don't believe her, right? They think she's trying to cover for him or something like that. And it wasn't just frustrating for her. According to Esty, the family was frustrated with the lack of police response in the early days. The local chief of police told them Jeremy would show up once the fair packed up.
Is that even an okay response?
No, but I don't think it was that far out of the norm back then in the 80s. I hate to say it, but, we've heard time and time again the police saying, well, don't worry, this person will show up. And it wasn't just adults. They were saying it about kids back then. Jeremy's 14 years old, and you don't launch a search party immediately. You just kind of like, once the fair packs up, he'll come home. That's so strange.
Like so it's okay for him being 14 and hanging out with whoever he's hanging out with until the fair leaves town. Okay.
Diane noted that at the time, there was no type of Amber Alert system for missing children. The police considered Jeremy a runaway teen who would come home eventually. Diane told the Statesman's Journal, we didn't know what to do. I don't think it really set in for months. And it's bad enough to not know where your child is. But it's even worse when you can't get the police to help you. I mean, you want to talk about a helpless feeling. That's like doubling down on it.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically waiting for the fair to leave town to be able to say, see, he didn't come home. We don't think he ran away, so can you start looking, please?
Sergeant Steve Dalton of the Coos County Sheriff's Department told Unsolved Mysteries he did like the fair. There was the thought that perhaps he was hiding out, intending to leave with the fair people, and I've explored that possibility in every way that I can think of. However, in this particular case, I've talked to family members and friends of his that knew him well, and he was just not, from what I can learn, the type of kid who would have struck out on his own. And not to say that 14-year-olds can't or don't. I just don't know how many of them would try to attempt that. It's pretty young.
You have to be pretty confident.
Or pretty naive.
That's true.
Right. One of the two, to think that you're going to be able to, at 14 years old, take care of yourself. Not to say that some haven't done it, but, to jump to that conclusion baffles me.
I mean, at 14, that carny life would be kind of attractive to some people.
I'm sure it would, right? I don't have to listen to parents' rules. I don't have to go to school.
Travel the U.S.
Yeah, I can travel the U.S. and hang out with these people. And maybe there's drugs and alcohol. I'm saying maybe. I'm sure there was in the 1980s in the carny atmosphere.
Might have been a few.
The family put up flyers and spoke to as many people as they could. Everyone they talked to saw Jeremy on Thursday, August 13th, not Friday the 14th. The case didn't receive much media attention initially. The first story about Jeremy's disappearance was published on August 19th. It was a brief article that likely didn't receive much notice from people outside the county. So that's 6 days, right, after he goes missing. The fair shut down on August 17th. By that time, rumors about what happened to Jeremy started circulating around Myrtle Point. One rumor was that Jeremy was abducted by a carnival worker. Another rumor was that Jeremy left the fair to go to a party where he drank a beer laced with powerful drugs and died of an overdose. His friends allegedly disposed of his body to avoid getting in trouble.
I don't remember beer being laced with stuff back then. Not that it couldn't have happened.
Right.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't either. But, when you start to theorize about what could possibly have happened to someone, once the rumor mill starts, it goes from plausible to somewhat plausible, to sometimes outlandish.
Yeah.
Could a carnival worker abduct someone? Well, sure, they could.
Yeah.
Are they just keeping them as they travel the countryside? And what are they telling their carny friends? Or are they abducting someone and leaving the carnival altogether? Those are possibilities. But then, you get into, okay, a beer laced with powerful drugs, and his friends disposed of his body to avoid getting in trouble. Like we say all the time, Could it happen? Yeah, I guess it could. Is it likely? No, I don't think so.
But it was placed out there.
And it wouldn't be the first time.
Right.
That you have heard that rumor in a disappearance case, or a rumor very similar. A third story was that Jeremy was accidentally shot during target practice or shot while swimming in the Coquille River, and his body was taken to a remote cabin where he eventually died. Okay.
Possible?
Yeah. Somewhat elaborate, somewhat unnecessary. That's kind of what I think about the overdose. I get it. Nobody wants to get in trouble for drinking when you're not supposed to. But that versus covering up someone's death and disposing of their body. Not that young kids, teens don't make really bad mistakes. That just seems awful strange. And then, okay, he shot while swimming in the river or shot during target practice. And somebody decides, well, I got to take his body to a remote cabin instead of just leaving him where he is.
Seems a little far-fetched.
It does. It does. Another version of this rumor was that 3 older teens showed up at a local swimming spot and harassed Jeremy and his friends. This information was passed to Sergeant Steve Dalton by a jailhouse informant. According to Sergeant Dalton, they subsequently took him to a cabin, maybe within 10 miles of the Myrtle Point area, and attempted to nurse him back to health. He died as a result of that injury, either from loss of blood or from infection or what have you. That same source indicated that his body would be found within 20 feet of this cabin in a shallow grave. The police did search the area around the cabin, but found nothing.
The whole older boys harassed the younger boys. Sounds like that movie back then. You know, where they walk down the railroad tracks.
Stand By Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great movie.
It was a good movie. Do you remember who was in that movie?
I think Kiefer Sutherland was one of the older boys.
He was.
You had River Phoenix.
Yeah.
Was kind of the main character. The guy who played like Geordi on Star Trek The Next Generation, then later played in Big Bang.
Yeah.
He was in it. And then the kind of overweight kid turned out to be a good-looking dude that was on like one of The Bachelors, I think.
You're right.
Can't think of his name, but...
Jerry something.
Yeah, Jerry something.
Yeah.
That was his name.
Yeah.
Jerry something.
He has a more famous brother that's an actor, I think. Well, he was an actor too.
And his name is something.
Something.
Diane said about the disturbing rumors, all of them are hard to think about. Every time I'd hear a new one, I'd have nightmares for a week or so. The one that I hope is not what happened is one where he suffered for 2 weeks before he died and they buried his body, because the thought of him suffering for 2 weeks just makes me sick.
It would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I get it. Rumors are natural. They're going to happen. But I think, you think about the family and what those types of rumors do to them. And Diane kind of paints the picture. It's like every time a new one pops up, she said she'd have nightmares for a week or so about that rumor.
It would be devastating.
And then another one would pop up and the whole cycle probably would repeat itself. The Coos County Sheriff's Office took over the case 3 months after Jeremy went missing. According to former Sheriff Craig Zanny, who worked the case in the 90s and the early 2000s, it caused a lot to go undocumented or in a timely fashion. And there wasn't a lot of context behind this quote, but my thought was it had to either be the fact that they didn't start the investigation right away, or that the sheriff's office didn't get it for 3 months. And he's saying by the time they got it, 3 months is a long time.
That is a long time in a disappearance case.
And maybe he's saying, without coming out and saying it, that, the local police didn't do much.
Yeah, well, he's saying they weren't timely and they didn't document anything very well.
By this point, authorities doubted that Jeremy ran away. In most cases, there's signs that the teen has thought about or planned to leave, but there were no signs with Jeremy. He was looking forward to returning to school. Investigators came to believe Jeremy died shortly after he was last seen. And that, to me, at least the idea that there was no thought or planning about him leaving makes sense.
Yeah.
Is he having trouble? Does he not want to go back to school? Is he fighting with his mom? Shouldn't they be able to uncover something that would make it seem as though he might want to run away? Or some type of planning, a notebook, something.
For me, it's just sad to think about the delay in treating this as a disappearance, because while the fair was in town, it was an opportunity to take his photo and go around and ask and see who saw him last and ask those questions and get those people's names.
Right. You don't even know who was working the fair at that time, because the fair pulls up, they leave, people go on to the next destination. Maybe they quit altogether. It's a real mess, I would think, 3 months later. Not that it's impossible, but it would be a lot harder.
It's a challenge.
And I'm not sure how the record keeping was, at a carnival in 1986.
Probably not that great. I doubt they had a bunch of spreadsheets going on.
Or like thumbprint scanners, biometric scanners.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't happening.
Former Sheriff Craig Zanny and Detective Staff Sergeant Dan Looney told the world that the Jeremy Bright case played a role in the creation of a multi-agency investigative unit with the Sheriff's Office, Oregon State Police, and local police departments. They noted that missing child cases are treated much differently today than they were back in 1986. And we talked about that earlier, right? When a child is reported missing today, I won't say in every instance, but it's much more likely that it's going to be taken very seriously by a law enforcement agency. Investigators eventually identified a person of interest. Terry Lee Steinhoff, described as a Myrtle Point mill worker, was Jeremy's former babysitter. Witnesses reported seeing Jeremy sitting with Steinhoff in a truck on the day of his disappearance. And it was said that Steinhoff was not cooperative with investigators, but there was not enough evidence to press charges, although he remained a strong person of interest.
I just wonder what they mean by he was not cooperative.
It means he did not cooperate.
To what level?
That's what that means.
Was he not cooperative? Yeah.
Which is strange, right? You would think you were this guy's babysitter when he was a kid. You must have some affection, some level of affection for him, or, some caring. Would you not want to cooperate with police as much as possible if you knew this kid was missing?
So what would be the reasons you wouldn't cooperate?
You were involved somehow, possibly with his disappearance, or you've got something else to hide, completely unrelated, that you don't want the police to find out about, so you don't want to have anything to do with police, or you're just completely distrustful of police altogether. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's probably how a lot of people are thinking about this right now.
Yeah, but if you are one of the last persons known to have been seen with Jeremy, right? He's seen sitting in your truck. You have a connection with him,
right,
as his former babysitter. And when the police ask you about it, you're not cooperative at all.
But like you keep saying, he was the kid's babysitter and he was close to Jeremy. So at one point, so why not just tell the police anything that you know about it?
Well, all of that stuff, right? You put it together, it's going to make you a person of interest, right? There's just no way around it. In August 1988, Unsolved Mysteries traveled to Myrtle Point to film a segment on Jeremy's disappearance. Diane was hopeful that national coverage of Jeremy's case would generate new leads. She told the Spokesman Review at the time, "It's got to work. I've got the chance to do a little more with this than a lot of other parents of missing children. A lot of them don't even get beyond their hometown." And that's very true, right? We have talked about it many times. If you can get on America's Most Wanted back in the day, if you could get on Unsolved Mysteries, those were big platforms. They reached a wide audience. And Diane's very right. Most parents of missing children don't get that kind of exposure.
Yeah.
So I can understand why she was very hopeful.
And I think Diane was very desperate too. She needs something to happen, right? So much time has went by. She just wants to get something going.
A month later, on September 7th, 1988, Terry Lee Steinhoff was arrested after a grand jury returned a first-degree murder indictment against him. He was charged with killing 32-year-old Patricia Morris, a mother of two. Patricia's body was found on May 14th, 1988, in thick brush near the Isthmus Slough Bridge in Coos County. She was stabbed multiple times in the throat. Her body was found between her home and the Pan American Bar in Coos Bay, where she was last seen alive. Authorities accused Steinhoff of stabbing her after she turned down his advances.
Well, maybe this is why he didn't want to cooperate.
Well, yeah, you could look at it that way. I think you could also look at it as if he is guilty of murdering Patricia, then to me, it's more likely that he could have murdered Jeremy as well, right? If you're capable of murder, you're capable of murder.
Sure.
In January 1989, the same week Unsolved Mysteries aired the segment on Jeremy's disappearance. Steinhoff pleaded no contest to stabbing Patricia Morris. He entered the plea shortly before he was set to go to trial. Steinhoff received a mandatory life sentence. His defense lawyer argued the no contest plea took away the judge's discretion to order Steinhoff to serve a minimum of 25 years before becoming eligible for parole. The DA said he expected Steinhoff to serve at least 10 years.
So it sounds like no contest might be the way to go if you're only going to serve 10 years.
I understand, right, that you could get a life sentence with the possibility of parole. But a mandatory life sentence and you only serve 10 years? That doesn't seem right. But what this did show, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, was that Steinhoff was a violent person, but there just still was nothing to link him to Jeremy's disappearance. He continued to refuse to cooperate with authorities or answer their questions. And to be honest with you, Gibbs, why would he? Right? He's serving a life sentence. The DA came out and said he should serve at least 10 years. He obviously is not going to want to put himself in a situation where he gets additional charges and additional time tacked on.
Yeah. Why would you want to do that?
As the years passed, the police felt more and more certain that Jeremy was dead. Sergeant Dan Looney told the world in 2007, "We believe he is still in the county somewhere, not alive." And I get that. You know, when 30 years has passed with no sign of someone, I don't know what else you can think. You know, is there the faint possibility that this person went off and is living their life, just never kind of hit the grid or never showed up on a database? Yes, there is that possibility. I think the percentage of that is pretty low, though. You and I talked on Patreon a few weeks ago about this article that came out about a woman who's been missing for 60 years.
Yeah.
And they just found her in Indianapolis. She just left and started her life in Indianapolis. So it does happen. I just think it's very rare in these cases.
Where I think what the sergeant said is more likely.
Yeah, that he's not alive, but he could possibly be, you know, buried or in the county somewhere. They just haven't been able to find his body. Diane was interviewed for the same article. The World quoted her as saying, "In my heart, I don't believe he would have been gone this long. If he had any choice, someday, that's my last wish, to find him." And I think that probably happens for, you know, most family members of people who disappear. The more time goes on, you know, at a certain point, does it seem to them that more likely than not, you know, my loved one has met with foul play? Because if they had the choice, they would have contacted me by now at some point, even if they were upset, right? And they decided, I'm getting the heck out of here. I'm starting life somewhere else. At some point, years down the road, wouldn't you want to just pick up the phone, talk to your mom, talk to your sister? What could your sister have done to you that you'd never want to talk to her again?
I'm sure it has to be torture.
Yeah, I'm sure it is too. And it sounds to me like Diane has, by this point, right, 30 some years has gone by. She's kind of in that mindset that she's not expecting to find Jeremy alive, but she does want to find his body. And I'm sure a lot of people get to that point. Sheriff Craig Zanny added that authorities tracked Jeremy's whereabouts. Through part of August 15th, investigators won't release this information to the public to protect the investigation. But they did reveal that some people of interest have never been cleared due to a lack of cooperation. And to me, that makes it sound like it's more than just Steinhoff.
Yeah.
As a person of interest who wouldn't cooperate. There may be some more people out there too. In her interview, Esty mentioned that at least one of Jeremy's close friends began having nightmares after his disappearance and has struggled with alcoholism ever since. She believes his problems stem from whatever happened to Jeremy.
Like maybe he knows something.
Maybe, or just that event was so traumatic. Right? Here's a close friend. They disappear. You don't know what happened to them. Maybe he has no idea what happened to them.
True.
He just struggles with the fact that he doesn't know. It could be a number of different things. But that's often overlooked, right? We talk a lot about the family. What do they go through? But what about friends, coworkers, people that, who know these individuals who go missing?
Yeah, it's going to have an impact on them.
Yeah. It could negatively affect them very greatly. Homes.com knows that when it comes to home shopping, it's never just about the house or condo. It's about the home. And what makes a home is more than just the house or property. It's the location and the neighborhood. If you have kids, it's also schools, nearby parks, and transportation options. That's why Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth information they need to find the right home. And when I say in-depth, I'm talking deep. Each listing features comprehensive information about the neighborhood, complete with a video guide. They also have details about local schools with test scores, state rankings, and student-to-teacher ratio. They even have an agent directory with the sales history of each agent. So when it comes to finding a home, not just a house, this is everything you need to know, all in one place. Homes.com. We've done your homework. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Months after this article was released, Terry Lee Steinhoff died on October 23rd, 2007. The World reported that he died of a heroin overdose in prison. KVAL reported at the time that Steinhoff was eligible for parole. So, he obviously did way more than 10 years in prison. Always shocks me that, prisoners are just sitting in prison doing heroin.
Clearly, you have not watched The Mayor of Kingstown yet.
No, but I have seen Oz. I know drugs get into the prisons in ways that, I'd rather not talk about, but it still seems like it should be very, very hard to get drugs into prison.
You would think not only hard getting them in there, but also be able to have the time to cook it up and inject it or whatever, however they're doing the heroin.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly all the different ways that heroin can be consumed. Apparently you have a somewhat better knowledge of it.
I'm slightly older than you. I've been around a little bit.
There will be mandatory drug testing
Here on out.
from here on out. Investigators hope that people who were afraid of Steinhoff would come forward after his death, but so far this hasn't happened. Jeremy's family held a memorial service for him in August 2011 on the 25th anniversary of his disappearance. They reiterated their belief that Jeremy was buried somewhere in the county and that there were individuals out there who had information and were not coming forward. Sheriff Craig Zanny spoke to KVAL in 2016 to provide updates about the investigation. He said about person of interest Terry Steinhoff, "We tried multiple times to talk to him about Jeremy's disappearance. He was never forthcoming." And I'll say it again, I don't know why he would be forthcoming if he had anything to do with Jeremy's disappearance. It would not have been in his best interest.
There was nothing to benefit him by doing that.
But, I mean, to authorities, that makes you look guilty.
And to people in the public.
Yeah, outside of law enforcement. Zanny also said that authorities conducted several searches of Steinhoff's property and other sites, including a pond in 2016, where police believed Jeremy's body could have been dumped. Zanny said, "Lots of times I think we're on the right path. The problem is I don't have enough information to do anything with." And unfortunately, I think that's true in a lot of unsolved cases. I think, Gibbs, a lot of times authorities have a fairly good idea of who might be responsible. But having an idea of who's responsible is not enough.
Yeah.
You need some pretty solid evidence to get an indictment and even better evidence to get a conviction. He noted that their goals have changed over the years, saying, "We're not concerned about identifying who it is and prosecuting them. We're just trying to bring closure to a family that suffered for the last 30 years on a daily basis of not knowing what happened to their brother or their son."
This is where my theory comes into play. Or theory, but my
Spidey sense? I don't know what you're going for here.
But I have this thought that once a case is X amount of years old, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 40, there's got to be a sweet spot, right, where you have to offer this, that you can still get closure, but you can't wait too long when there's nobody to give you that closure.
Yes.
But basically you say, you just come forward, tell us everything. You're not going to be prosecuted. Nothing's going to happen to you. We just want to be able to shut the door on this and give the family closure, maybe recover the body, and we reserve the right to say you're a piece of shit for doing what you did, but outside of that, we're not going to take any other action.
Well, the other thing is, and I know you've talked about it before, we just said that they were still holding back information, right? In 2000 whatever, 25 years after the murder. At what point do you kind of lay everything out there? Because you're not as worried about being able to prosecute someone as you are getting the information that will help you give closure to the family.
Because sometimes that information you can lay all out there could be something that sparks a memory in somebody.
Yeah.
And be like,
absolutely.
Hey, I thought it might have been this one guy, but I didn't think it would be related to this case. But now that I see this, I think it is. Let me call them and tell them this.
But could it also be that he's saying, we're not concerned about prosecuting them because the person we believe did it is already dead?
That's a strong possibility.
But he's just not coming out and saying that.
Right.
Jeremy's sister, Esty, told KVAL, everybody knew each other. Everybody knew what was going on with everybody else. And I just can't believe that Jeremy just, vanished and nobody knows anything. In 2018, the sheriff's office received a tip that led them to a well in Myrtle Point. Unfortunately, nothing came of this search. Sheriff Zanny said that the tip about this particular well was not new. When the sheriff's office took over the case in 1986, they searched 4 wells in the area. The deepest was 32 feet. The wells were emptied and investigators were lowered to the bottom. They found rat and raccoon skeletons, but no human remains.
So just want you to sink in on that for a minute. Everybody has a nice open well.
There's
raccoon skeletons. It's well water.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
Some of the tips they have received over the years were unusual. For example, the sheriff's office once received a tip instructing them to follow a road to a concrete bridge in western Nebraska, but they didn't find anything. You're going to get a lot of tips, right, in these types of cases. Most of them, 99.999%, are not going to lead you in the right direction. But you got to check up on them.
You have to, right?
Authorities have also followed on the tip that Jeremy was working for a circus. In the colder months, traveling fairs typically move south. So Sheriff Zanny sent officers to Florida. They actually found a young man named Jeremy Bright working at a circus, but he was not their missing person. This young man was from Colorado. So, I mean, they are definitely working the case through the years.
Just not having any luck.
Zanny also spoke about some of the original rumors in the case, saying, when we were in retirement, we tried to run those rumors to ground and could trace them to the original source, which were from the same few people. And that's interesting, that a whole bunch of rumors, different rumors, were kind of traced back to a small number of people.
Why would they do that? Just to try to throw investigators off the course, or just because they like messing with people?
Well, these individuals were arrested for other crimes over a decade earlier. Zanny spoke to them when they were first arrested and presented them a letter from the DA's office offering them immunity in exchange for information on Jeremy. Zanny told the world, if you're looking at going to prison for 10 years and that was your ticket to walk away, and if they knew anything, they would have fessed up. Instead, they served their time and are out now. So they kind of did what you talked about. Tell us what you know, even if it implicates you. We're giving you immunity.
Right.
They obviously didn't know anything, or they would have taken that kind of get out of jail free card.
Absolutely, they would have, or should have.
He claimed that one man told him, "You think I wouldn't take that letter? Why would I spend time in prison when all I have to say is here's what really happened, but then I'd be lying and you'd find out." Zanny does believe one specific individual has information that could solve the case, but he has no way to prove it without them coming forward. As of 2025, Jeremy's case remains open. No one has ever been arrested in connection with his disappearance, despite dozens of interviews and searches all over Coos County. At the time of his disappearance, Jeremy was described as 6 foot tall, 140 pounds with green eyes and brown hair, a scar on his forehead and nose, and a mole on his chin. He was last seen wearing blue nylon shorts and a red tank top. And that sounds very 80s to me.
Well, you're wearing something similar right now, though.
Well, I am, because I'm stuck in the 80s.
That's true.
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has an aged, progressed photo of Jeremy on their website showing what he would look like at age 48. Jeremy's mother, Diane, runs a Facebook group called Help Find Jeremy Dolan Bright that you can view for links to articles and other media about the case. If you have any information about the disappearance of Jeremy Bright, you can call the Coos County Sheriff's Office at 541-396-3121. So, Gibbs, as we wrap this one up, you have a 14-year-old in a small town fair setting, right? Carnival type setting. We talked about all the rumors. Could it have been a carnival worker that abducted Jeremy and then, the carnival up and left town? Again, it doesn't sound like in the first few months there was a lot of work done until the county sheriff's office actually took over the case. And that there was a lot of time there, crucial time,
right,
that went by where I think they could have gathered information but didn't. To me, this Steinhoff guy is probably the most compelling person in the case, just because, he was Jeremy's babysitter. They were sitting in his truck on the day he went missing. And then he doesn't want to cooperate with police.
I align with you. I think maybe Steinhoff had something to do with it, but I'm still curious about the stepfather. Like, did they have further interviews with them? I couldn't find that in the research. I don't think you did either.
No, I mean, there was not a lot of reporting on what he was kind of doing that day outside of, he met with Jeremy at the tavern later that night.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of reporting on what Esty was doing. Not that I'm saying she had anything to do with it.
No, yeah.
But what was she doing between that 5:00 time and like 9:40 when Jeremy asks for money from Orville? Like, who's picking her up? How does she and Orville not touch base during that time so that Orville knows Jeremy never showed up when he was supposed to?
Yeah, I just would like to know who else was at that tavern at that time, and because that's the last time anybody saw him that we know of.
Yeah, my thought is it probably was corroborated, but there was nothing in the research to say that. The one thing that definitely didn't come out in the research is that they were really looking at the family or had concerns that it was a family member.
Right.
But my mind did go to the babysitter angle, because we have had cases that you and I have done. There's cases that, I've read about where things have happened between someone who used to be a babysitter. Maybe something happened back when Jeremy was younger.
Yeah.
Maybe he confronted this guy about it.
Could have.
Some type of abuse. Maybe he said he was going to tell somebody about it. Had never done so, but was going to.
Good point.
There's a lot of different ways that could have gone.
I also think about that day, if the local police would have jumped on this. I mean, this is a kid that's 6 foot tall, walking around the fair. I think people would recall that.
In a red tank top. Yeah.
And maybe they would have got some good information, but because they didn't treat it as such, now, Jeremy's mom, Diane, and his sister, Estee, they wonder where he's at.
And it wasn't just 48 hours, 72 hours. It really seemed like there was 3 months or so that went by before really much of an intense investigation even started. That's just a long period of time.
It really is.
So I don't know. I don't know what happened. And I'm not sure, Gibbs, that there really is anyone alive that knows what happened. If you think that, Steinhoff was behind it, well, he's dead.
Right.
And if he didn't tell anybody else, there may not be anybody left to, fill in the details. But that's it for our episode on Jeremy Bright. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
I took a little break from listening to podcasts, and I just started back today, and when Gibby said, you watch too many spy shows, I apparently watch too many, I don't want to say it, but murder shows, because when you said cleaner, I thought that she was a cleaner that cleaned up bloody, gruesome crime scenes. So maybe I should stop watching stuff like that, but it kind of made me laugh anyway. See ya. Well, I guess I won't see ya, but you know what I mean.
So she took a break. She's back.
She's back.
That job, because there are people, right, that do crime scene cleanup.
They do.
The police don't do that.
No.
Once they leave the house, you got to find somebody or do it yourself. That would be just a tough job, I think. Day after day, cleaning up some of the worst of the worst.
It would not be fun for some people.
No, you'd have to have the right stomach and kind of temperament for that job.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. I'm sorry that I'm calling again, but I was listening to one of your guys' podcasts today, and I can't remember which episode it was or the number, because I'm trying to catch up on all 400 or something right now. But I'm on 100, I believe. But you were wanting to know what movie had two guys driving in a car, on a CB pretending like they're girls, and a semi driver going after them. That movie is called Joyride. It has Paul Walker and Steve Zahn. I can't pronounce his last name. Honey, go back. Vahn is the guy's last name. The first name is Steve. But yeah, it's a good movie. Me and my husband really enjoy it. They have 1, 2, and 3. And Lily Subsea. These names are so hard to pronounce. But you guys understand that situation. But sorry to call again, but I just thought I'd let you guys know because you guys were asking about that today. Have a good one.
All right. Love it. I don't know if that was hubby trying to chime in there. She said, go back. Go back.
Let me make this call without you, please.
I think I've seen that, but haven't in a while. I should probably go back and watch it because I like that Steve Zahn a lot. I think that's how you say his name. She's right. We understand what it's like to try to figure out how to say names.
Yeah, I have to save you all the time with things you don't know how to say.
And Paul Walker, unfortunately he's gone, but he's been in a lot of good movies, and I liked him as an actor. I really did.
It was good. It was good flick. I don't remember 2 and 3. I just remember watching 1. But
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to see about watching those other ones.
Yeah, maybe they're all good. Sometimes just the first one's good.
Normally the first one's the best of any
them
series,
all. Right?
But
that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV has all the shows and movies you love streaming for free. That means laughter is free with gut-busting comedies like The Neighborhood, Boomerang, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. Mystery is free with countless cases to crack from Criminal Minds, Tracker, and Matlock.
I'm a lawyer, like the old TV show.
And thrills are free with heart-pumping hits like The Walking Dead and Pulp Fiction. Correctamundo. Feel the free Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.